Hey, this is Jamie from Stonemaier Games, also the designer of Expeditions, along with the world builder and artist Jakub Rosalski. So today, a few of you have asked if I could talk a little bit more in detail about the backstory and how that relates to the characters who are going on these expeditions up into Siberia, and also how those characters and that backstory tie into the goal of the game or the different goals that you're trying to accomplish in the game. So I'm going to try to cover that today. It's a few separate topics that are connected a little bit or connected quite a bit. And I'm going to start by looking at my other screen here where I have what Jakub wrote about part of the backstory, part of the kind of the foundation of what is happening here. Why are we going on these expeditions after the events of the Rise of Fenris and Scythe? And I should note that Expeditions does not include any spoilers from the Rise of Fenris, although there are a few things that happen in Expeditions that are the result of things that happen in the Rise of Fenris. So I'm not going to spoil anything. The game does not spoil anything, but there are some connections that you can make if you have played the Rise of Fenris, which is the last expansion to Scythe. So let me read what Jakub wrote here. This is part of a little excerpt of what he wrote. So he's talking about the world after the Rise of Fenris. He says, the world, the 1920 plus world, was still full of undiscovered places, secrets, and treasures waiting to be discovered. Many of us, so he's kind of talking from the perspective of the people of the world and the characters, many of us, unable to find a place in society, started looking for adventure and travel to the most remote corners of the world, looking for traces of lost civilizations and artifacts. Everyone, he's talking in general here, is partially Jakub just kind of like explaining things to me as if he's just talking to me. He says, everyone has their own baggage and experiences, different goals and motivations. It was a time of expeditions, adventures, and explorers. In 1925, in Siberia, near the Tunguska River, a strange comet struck in the middle of the taiga, causing catastrophic damage. Soon after the event, a group of scientists and explorers, led by my friend Dr. Tarkovsky, my friend, so I guess this is written from the perspective of one specific character, organized an expedition to investigate this event. Unfortunately, no one had any contact with them for many months, and people started to report strange things happening in the area. We decided to organize a rescue mission and explain what happened to Tarkovsky and his men. And actually, the perspective that Jakub is writing from here isn't one of the characters. I should clarify this. He's writing from the perspective of another expedition that goes out to find what happened to Tarkovsky. It is that expedition that also goes missing as the result of some things that Tarkovsky is doing in Tunguska. And it is that expedition that contacts you, whichever character you are, contacts all the different characters and says, and lets them know that some really odd things are happening in Tunguska and that you should come explore, that you should come investigate. Jakub also wrote some other things here. I'm going to read a little bit of this, not everything, because I don't want to really spoil it, but he goes into a little bit of the backstory of what's happening here. And he says, Tarkovsky was a researcher of an unknown and ancient civilization. Many times he organized expeditions to find out the origin of mysterious ruins and objects, mainly in inaccessible areas of Siberia and the Arctic. After the meteorite impact, his research group was the first to go to the crash site. Its members were possessed by mysterious organisms, and he himself, Tarkovsky, became their leader. And so, yeah, this kind of sets the tone for what happens with Tarkovsky. Tarkovsky is, or was, a friend of that was one of my cats there. He was a friend of many of the characters in the game. And so, and Jakub kind of told me this many times during the design process, that even though Tarkovsky is the antagonist of the story, he isn't necessarily someone that the characters want to kill or get rid of, because he was their friend. It's just that he has been possessed by these mysterious organisms that come out of these meteorite shards that end up in Tunguska. Let me see if there's anything here that I can share without totally spoiling anything. And really, this is not a game of spoilers, but I think it is a game that's fun to discover these things as you play. I can say this. These organisms came from another dimension, and they were sent by an ancient civilization that wants to awaken and rebuild itself. So these are kind of forces much bigger than Tarkovsky, and much bigger than Tarkovsky can actually handle himself. So yeah, that's the backstory. That's the reason that these characters are going on this mission, on these expeditions. And let me talk a little bit about the characters now. So I'm going to share their backstories from the rulebook. It's in the rulebook itself, but I'll read the backstories and I'll show you what these character cards do. Let's start with Matthew and Caesar. So these are new. This is a new character companion pairing. So at the beginning of each game in Expeditions, you are going to get a pairing of characters and companions. And this pairing, they're always together. Matthew is always with Caesar. You're not matching Matthew with another random animal companion. They're always going together, but they are matching with a random mech. So every game you'll have a different combination of character companion plus a mech. So I'll try to hold these up while I read from the rulebook here about Matthew and Caesar. Matthew is a fearless explorer, adventurer, and survivalist, particularly in the coldest regions of the world. When he learns of the unexplained disappearance of his friend, Dr. Tarkovsky, he sets off with a search. I'm sorry, I'm moving those around. He sets off with a search and rescue mission with his faithful Siberian husky, Caesar. And so these cards show you a couple different things. So they have core values, and each character and companion has slightly different core values. You can see Matthew starts out with 1 power. Caesar gives you 1 guile when you play Caesar. These are your starting hand. You only start with these 2 cards. But as you accomplish the goals in the game, I'll talk a little bit about the goals in a minute, but as you place glory, these stars, on base camp, on the chart on base camp, you actually improve their core value for the rest of the game. So this gives you a reason to not wait until the end of the game to accomplish goals. The sooner that you can accomplish at least 1 or 2 of these goals, you will increase the core value of your starting cards. So let's say halfway through the game, you have placed 2 glory stars on base camp. For the rest of the game, Caesar's core power isn't just 1 guile, it's 2 guile plus 1 power. Matthew would be 2 power plus 1 guile. I'm mentioning this because I won't repeat it for every character, but every character has slightly different stats there. So Matthew, when you play Matthew, if you put a green worker on an explorer, Matthew says gain a yellow worker. This is one of the worker types. Yellow workers are merchants. Gain a yellow worker. And then the following text is the same on all characters. I'll read it once for Matthew, but it's the same for all characters because characters are the primary way that you can solve quests in the game. I talked about quest in the last video. So it says solve a quest. If you solve, so you'll choose one of those 2 things, and if you solve that quest, gain the core value of all of your solved quests. So that normally solving a quest just has you solve the quest itself. The character gives you a little bonus. If you use the character specifically to solve the quest, you get a little bonus there. So that's Matthew. His special asymmetric element is that he can, if you play him and place a green worker here, he can let you gain a merchant. He can attract a merchant to your crew. Caesar, friendly Caesar here. Caesar says if you place a yellow worker here, and you can notice here that there's a pairing that's going on. If you place, Matthew lets you gain a yellow worker, you want to place a yellow worker on Caesar. Caesar says his special ability is to simply move to an adjacent location. So even just by playing a card, Caesar lets you move your mech to an adjacent location. And this ability is something that I won't read for all characters because it's the same, or for all companions, it says, or vanquish. If this vanquish removes the location's final corruption, you may gain the revealed benefit. So you have corruption on the locations in the game, so many of the locations. And normally when you vanquish, you just gain the token itself. You gain the corruption that you vanquished. The companions give you a little extra bonus there, where if you do reveal the final corruption and you reveal a new benefit underneath that on the location, you also get to use that benefit right away. So Matthew and Caesar. I'll talk a little bit more about card design in a second, but that gives you a good example so you can anchor what I'm going to show you for the rest of the characters. Let's talk about the next one in the rulebook. Vesna and Voltan. All right, Vesna and Voltan. I'll hold those up. Here's Vesna and Voltan. Voltan's kind of a mechanical Arctic fox. So Vesna is the founder of Voltan Technology Corporation, which has become the preeminent provider of robots in Europa and beyond. When she learns of the mysterious meteorite and the missing expeditions that followed, she sets off with her robotic Arctic fox, Voltan, to search for new technology. So Vesna is motivated by new technology. She can gain her ability, if you place a blue worker there when you play her, is to gain a face-up item. And this is one thing I wanted to mention with Matthew and Caesar, that during the design process, I considered giving players asymmetric goals as well, or really paired with the characters. So like if you're playing with Vesna, Vesna would have a goal that makes her want to gather technology. As her description reads, she wants to gather technology. But I moved away from that during the design process and instead just built it into her ability. Vesna is motivated by gaining technology, and so that's part of her ability here. She's good at gathering items or gaining more items. Items are cards in the game. Volten's special ability, what does he say? Activate an adjacent face-up card's ability. Yeah, that's quite powerful, actually, to activate an adjacent face-up card's ability. So you'll have a bunch of cards face-up on within the locations, and Volten is saying, that you can just activate the ability. You don't have to place a worker there. You just activate the ability. That's a very powerful ability. A reason to like move to a place adjacent to a card on the board. You don't have to gain that card. You're just activating the ability with Volten if you place a red worker. So yeah, that was a little design element there where I considered giving them goals, but instead built them into their core actions themselves. So this is eventually going to segue into the overall goals that you're trying to accomplish in the game, but I wanted to mention that here, that these are some specific goals, things that your characters are good at because of who these characters are. Let's talk about one of the protagonists of Scythe, Anna and Wojtek. Anna is a merchant and a diplomat, always in search of ways to help others. When she learns of the disappearance of multiple expeditions and new troubles that plague the people of Siberia, she sets off with her trusty companion and war hero, Wojtek. Anna's special ability is to gain a face-up quest. So she's looking to help people, and quests are how you help people, how you build up your popularity, your rapport with the people of the land. And Wojtek says, rescue an active card. So rescue is an ability. I haven't talked much about rescue, but rescue is like a mini refresh. So when you take a refresh turn in expeditions, you take all the cards that you've played or gained from your active row, all cards and all workers that are on those cards, and you refresh them. You return the cards to your hand, you return the workers to your mech mat so you can use them again. Rescue is like a mini version of that, where you just select one card from your active row and you return that one card, and a worker, if there's a worker on it, you return the worker to, you return that to your hand. And so Wojtek he wants to rescue things. He's a rescuer. So he helps you rescue one specific card. So, and one thing I want to mention here is at the beginning of the game, even just with these two starting cards, you have a compelling choice, or I think you do at the beginning of the game. Which card do you play first? Do you play... because remember, you can't activate these benefits until you have workers, and you don't start off the game with any workers. So do you start your first turn by moving and gathering a worker? Because in the southern locations, you do have access to all worker types. So do you move and gather a worker and then do you use that worker on which card? So if you move and gather, which card do you play next? And how does that card's ability impact the next card that you play as well? So like with Wojtek, I might play Anna first and then use Wojtek and a yellow worker, if I was able to get a yellow worker on my first turn, to play Wojtek and activate that ability and return Anna to my hand right away. That saves me a refresh turn early on in the game. So that's Anna and Wojtek. Let's move on to Gunther and Nacht. So Gunther and Nacht. Here is a Gunther here. You'll also notice, as I'm talking about this, that in Scythe there are factions. There aren't factions in expeditions. They're just characters that are going off in the world, trying to find their way in the world, basically. So even though these characters are associated originally from Scythe with specific factions. Gunther and Nacht. Gunther is a world-famous soldier, leader, and tactician, though he finds himself with a lack of purpose during times of peace. When he learns of strange attacks and lines drawn in the snow of Siberia, he heads north with his aging direwolf, Nacht. So Gunther is motivated by, he finds purpose in war and conflict. And so Gunther, he has the soldier on him. You need to place the soldier, but he's also an explorer. So whenever you place a soldier there to activate that ability, you gain a green worker, gain an explorer. And then Nacht. Nacht says gain the core value of any other card you control. So this is a way to kind of power up yourself early on in the game, or at any time in the game, because you're looking at the core value. Gain the core value of any other card you control. So this order of operations doesn't matter here. You could play Gunther first. You don't have to play Gunther. You control Gunther whether he's in your hand or your active row. And so Nacht lets you gain the core value of Gunther or another card that you control if you use that ability. We have two more pairings here. So we have Olga and Chang'e. Here's Olga and Chang'e. Olga is a former intelligence officer who has rejected the warmonger ways of her homeland, instead finding refuge in remote towns and villages. It is in one such village that she originally met Dr. Tarkovsky. When she learns of his ill-fated expedition and those that followed, she sets off to find them with her Siberian tiger, Chang'e. So Olga's ability is to gain a blue worker. So gain a blue worker is her ability. And Chang'e, gain one exposed benefit from an adjacent location. Gain one exposed benefit from an adjacent location. So we had an ability earlier that looked at cards within the map. Chang'e looks at the locations themselves and looks at exposed abilities there. The term exposed is used because some benefits on locations are covered by corruption, and so they're not revealed yet. You can't see them. And last, we have Akiko and Jiro. Here's Akiko and Jiro. So Akiko is an academic who in recent years has devoted herself to the study of ancient artifacts and lost civilizations that predate humankind. When she hears rumors of strange occurrences in Tunguska that follow the meteorite crash, she sets out to investigate with her clever monkey, Jiro. So Akiko, I keep looking at the wrong one, Akiko gains face-up meteorites. So we have cards that gain all the different, so characters gain all different types of cards. Akiko wants to find the meteorites. Vesna wanted the items, and Anna wanted the quest, goes after quest. And Jiro says activate the previous card's ability. So this is one other thing. And this is something I kind of tried to do with the design of these character cards. I tried to introduce a number of concepts that are important throughout the game, important for players to learn throughout the game. Jiro is saying that you can activate the previous card's ability, and previous refers to the previously played card, the previous card in the active row, not necessarily played, but in the active row. And so if I, on my first turn, play Akiko to the active row, and on my next turn I play Jiro and activate his ability with a blue worker, then the previous card there was Akiko, and so I get to activate her ability. Don't have to place a worker there, just to activate the ability. At the same time, on my first turn, I could gather a card. I could gather a card from the board. That goes into the leftmost slot of my active row. And so if I played Jiro after that, it would be that card's ability that I would activate. So right away, I can activate an ability, a powerful ability, without even placing a worker. It's a pretty powerful combo here with Akiko and Jiro. Those are all the characters in the game so far. We are hoping in expansions to add other characters, and because they're just cards, they don't have miniatures associated with them, it's pretty easy for us to add a bunch of different characters, and we're hoping to do that. Our character companion pairings. So how does all this tie? Here's the final topic of the day. How does this tie to the goals of the game? So I've talked about some of these kind of motivations that the characters have, but what are players motivated by, and how does that tie to the backstory? So ultimately, these characters are explorers. They're going on expeditions. They have the kind of their personal motivations, but they're also after purpose. They're after glory. And glory in expeditions is represented by stars. You get 4 stars. Each player has 4 wooden stars. This is not quite the final version of Basecamp. There's some things that are going to be different. This chart down here is really the same mathematically, but it's going to move over here, so there's more space. And then this slot here was supposed to be cut out because that is where a southern location will slot in during setup. There we go. We'll just slot in there. It's not supposed to be, this isn't supposed to be a rectangle. It's supposed to be like that, you know. So we're fixing that too in the final version of the PPC. But anyway, mechanically, they are the same. So these represent the goals that you're pursuing in the game. And overall, you're pursuing glory, but you're also pursuing riches. And so coins, like inside, the coins are the same as points. You're trying to gather as many coins as possible for the end of the game. You'll score some bonus coins, 2 coins for every corruption token that you clear from the land. And you'll also score some coins for every item that you upgrade. That's kind of the end game benefit of upgrading items. But you also have these 8 different categories. 8 different categories here, and one is actually combined. I'll talk about that one at the end. But 8 different categories of things that you are pursuing in the game to gain stars. And even if you don't do anything to help boost the value of those stars, every star that you place is going to be worth $5. I'll talk about that boost right now. So one of the things that you can do is solve 4 quests. So they're completion bonuses. I find that completion is really satisfying in games. Scythe does it. You're completing these different things. I think the game Dead Reckoning does this really well. It feels good to complete something. And so completing something here is solving 4 quests. And the quests are the multiplier. So at the end of the game, depending on how many quests that you've solved, the stars that you place improve in value. And so if I've solved I've solved all 4 quests, 3 or 4 quests, all of my stars that I place are worth 10 coins instead of just 5. So it's 5, 6, 8, 10, depending on how many quests I've solved. Similar to the quest, the 3 cards that you can tuck under your mat are meteorites, so that's another category, gathering and melding meteorites, and items, gathering and upgrading items. So even though certain cards I mentioned, like Vesna, is better at gaining items, but she still has to actually upgrade them to work towards this goal. So a little better at gaining cards, but not necessarily better at going after this goal. Because I wanted to leave this up to players. I wanted to leave this up to what you're motivated by in any given game. 4 stars, 8 total things that you can pursue. The next category here, this icon is going to change to be a little bit clearer, but this category is to find location 20. So this is the final location. This is where Dr. Tarkovsky's lair is, to not only find that location, but also remove the 20 value corruption token from that location. Most corruption tokens in the game, corruption tokens are these tokens, these wooden tokens. Pull a few of these out. So these wooden tokens in the game, most of them are numbered 3 through 5, 3, 4, or 5. However, when you find location 20, and you have to go find it, it's up there in the north somewhere. When you find it, you're going to put a 20 value corruption token on it. That is the full value that you can possibly have of guile plus strength on this track, because it goes up to 10. So you need to have 10 guile and 10 strength, and then go there and vanquish that corruption from location 20. If you pull that off, just by doing that, 1 corruption token, you get a star here. You have to boast about it too. I'll return to that in 1 second here. Corruption, trying to clear corruption from the land. Something bad is happening in this area. Your characters care about that. You are trying to clear this corruption from the land. If you do that 7 times, if you clear 7 corruption tokens, not counting this one, just normal corruption tokens, you get a star. This category over here is it's just have 8 cards. So gather 8 cards. Cards don't have a cost. You have to actually you typically gather benefits. Some of the characters also have those card gaining benefits. So that is one way that cards like Vesna do move you towards a goal. But the key here is you have to actually have 8 cards that you can play. Having a tucked card, it's no longer considered a card at that point if you've tucked it. So you need to actually have 8 cards in your control to gain that benefit. And this last category we found, originally this was 2 separate categories, but we found that they were a little bit too easy to complete. And so we combined them into one category. So you can kind of choose here. Do you want to go after 7 workers, to have 7 workers in your tableau? Or do you want to have 5 exploration tokens here? What do I actually call them? Map tokens. You want to have 5 map tokens. It may seem a little bit easier to get that, and it might be a little bit. You can move around, go to new locations and get the map tokens. But there are only, how many map tokens are there? I believe there are 14 map tokens on the board. And so there's a distinct possibility that you won't be, in a higher player count game, that you won't be a player to get those map tokens. They just won't be available. And there might be other locations that you want to go to. When you are moving to a face-down location in the game, you don't really know what you're going to get there. You're leaving behind some agency there and seeing what ends up being on that location. So workers are a little bit more certain, and workers actually help contribute to your engine compared to map tokens. The last thing I wanted to mention here that I left off, and again, all these things are tied to your motivations. All these elements of backstory of the characters. You're explorers. You're building a crew. You're gathering all these cards. You're discovering these cards, these meteorite cards, these items, these quest cards, and you're improving your mech. You're improving your own ability to go on these expeditions by improving your mech itself, and you're just going on. You're helping out this area of the world. You're clearing corruption from the land. But key difference here between this and Scythe, Expeditions and Scythe. In Scythe, whenever you accomplish one of those goals, these completion benefits that I talked about, whenever you complete a goal, in Scythe, you automatically just get a star. You get a star on the board. In Expeditions, That is not the case. In Expeditions, you have to boast about it. You have to tell the world that you accomplished this goal. Let me find a location that has a boast on it. All right, here's the fishing village location. This is originally covered, this is a boast action. This is covered by corruption when you first find it. So you have to clear corruption from there, and then you have to go to the village and boast about it. That's how you have to tell people that you accomplished this goal. And so if I've accomplished the goal of having 8 cards, I need to then go to a location like this and boast about it. I need to let people know, and that is how you place the star on the board. Having that little separation mechanically, if you played Scythe, there can be some sudden unexpected moments in the game where someone places a star, maybe even places 2 stars, and that can really rapidly end the game unexpectedly or move the game forward unexpectedly. In Expeditions, we have that extra layer where you can't, it isn't something that you have to remember. You don't have to remember to do that. Sometimes people forget to place stars in Scythe. In Expeditions, you have an action specific to it, a benefit specific to placing those stars. But also, it adds an extra layer, a little buffer between when you've completed the goal and when you actually are rewarded for the goal. That little buffer there can give other players a heads up. Hey, this is happening in a few turns, or maybe next turn, or maybe even later on this turn, but you have to do something about it. You have to actually go boast. One player is going to advance the game. And I found that really, really helped in Expeditions. It kind of countered that criticism of Scythe, the completely valid criticism in Scythe. So yeah, that's my video here today about the backstory, the characters in the game, and both their goals and the overall goals of the game and how they're tied to the theme of the game. I know it's just mostly me rambling here, holding things up to the camera, but I'm happy to do this. If you have any other questions or any other topics that you'd like me to cover, I'm happy to do so. And it was fun, of course, to reveal all the different character and companion cards in the game. If you want to reference these more, you can go back and pause the video, or you can just look in the rulebook. All of these are shown in the rulebook itself. So I'll be back maybe in a week or 2 for another video. Just let me know what you want me to cover. I'm happy to cover it. There's nothing to hide about Expeditions. I know one thing that has been asked is for a full playthrough. That is really tough for me to do on my desktop setup here. I have a camera coming that might help, but it's probably best to leave that to people who are really good at showing playthroughs, and that'll happen in May. But in the meantime, I have this early pre-production copy of the game, and I can continue to show things from this pre-production copy to you. I'm happy to do that. Thanks.